When it comes to privacy and accountability, people always demand the former for themselves and the latter for everyone else. David Brin. One of the neat things about living in the year 2044 is that you can walk through what used to be the worst neighborhood in town without fear of being bugged. There are so many cameras and sensors everywhere, including on the typical pedestrian and automobile, that you would have to be a ninja to flee the scene of any crime. There wouldn't be much point anyway. What little cash anyone carries all has its serial number recorded at every cash register and by every wallet too. And every device or piece of jewelry worth more than a few bucks has some sort of serial number or barcode on it somewhere, and logged on your phone and your cloud backups. Most folks have their name and basic bio displayed in augmented reality all the time too. It's voluntary but nigh impossible to forge, and a lot of people think of it as a basic courtesy, like wearing a name tag. But everybody else's phone logs who they were and where and when they got encountered. So does every market and store, so they have the data of who is visiting and when. Many stores don't even let customers in anymore unless they have their ID on. The official reasoning is it cuts down on shoplifting attempts, but mostly they just want the traffic data. They argue they have a right to refuse service to anyone who isn't willing to give a name, and the folks have been using credit and debit cards for years anyway. Plus you can shop online for basically anything and have it delivered. It's not even that the government has surveillance on everything. Indeed, it's got some big limits on what it is allowed to record and where it can put cameras. But there's just so many voluntary neighborhood watch-like programs and apps for folks to use who just voluntarily let their phone report the location of everyone they passed by that day. Even the folks who have their ID off are very easily tagged by AI reviewing their face against known photos out on the web. Everyone's house has cameras on it, and other detectors, all sending their data into the house brain, and it can use that to let you keep track of your neighbors blocks away in terms of who went where and when. So you can just look up every visitor to your neighbor's house for the last year if you want, and automatically sell that data to various third parties. You might as well too, some unscrupulous person's going to anyway, so why shouldn't you make a few bucks? Indeed, many pay rewards and bounties for catching cheating partners. Those same third parties let you basically look up anyone anywhere and see where they've been and where they are now, and good AI can make guesses about a lot of behaviors. Want to know if your significant other is cheating on you? There's an app for that, with a 99.8% success rate on predicting that correctly. Want to know if an employee has ever been accused of cheating or stealing? There's an app for that too. Results not guaranteed, of course, but good enough. Got a guest coming over for dinner? Or a customer at your restaurant? Well, there's plenty of restaurants and grocery stores out there that sell their data on what customers bought and liked, and there's an app that tracks it. It's very easy to find products or information in the year 2044. Products are very tailored, and so are ads and marketing, and physical crimes are almost non-existent, though there's a lot of general anxiety and crimes related to that. You almost never see an ad for something you don't like, and industries can predict the demand for their products better than ever before, allowing greater efficiency and less waste. It's a prosperous society, and one where you can get almost anything right away. And better, often suggested to you before you even knew you needed it. All those monitors everywhere catch things needing maintenance, for instance. Prosperous or not, though, some products just don't sell like they used to. Almost nobody seems to want to buy fish bowls or hamster wheels anymore. So today we'll be asking ourselves if privacy is going extinct, and if so, can we do anything about it, and should we do anything about it? And it's going to be a bit more complex than it sounds like, so a drink and a snack might be in order. The first thing we have to get out of the way is that technology to render privacy basically extinct, at least as we think of it nowadays, is already here and getting better and easier to use all the time. It's not about how small and discreet we can make a camera either. It's about the Internet of Things and how all those things producing data and sending to something able to organize it. You have a sensor on your robot vacuum cleaner. It collects data and gives that to your phone or house computer. You've got motion detectors around your house. It gets that too. You've got cameras on the outside of the house. You've got microphones listening for your commands and hearing everything else. Your car has this stuff too and keeps reporting it all night long in your driveway or garage. You and your neighbor probably have a deal to share intruder-sensitive data back and forth automatically via some app that promises overall privacy in the process. You are wearing a smartwatch that monitors your blood pressure and heart rate, anything else medically useful, and you've probably got those on your kids and pets too. Heck, you probably have cameras on them. The house AI knows how often you burp, how frequently you use the restroom, how many calories you just ate, and so long as that data is only yours, it's really very useful even without imagining how much seemingly unrelated information you could CSI out of that. If we could magically promise that wouldn't get hacked or abused, it would be awesome. You would never misplace anything again. You could pull up an itemized list in mere moments of everything you'd eaten and when, everything you bought, every book you own, every film or song you ever watched or listened to, and also your biometric data when you were doing it that said how much you enjoyed it and even which moments or pages you most liked or found boring. Think about how insanely deeply you could profile someone with all that information and an AI able to run even fairly simple detective work on it. The benign or positive use is being able to suggest with great accuracy which other books or songs or films you would like, and friends who might share that interest, and of course many folks would share that data and already do. We're not even talking about intentionally malicious, dystopian, or Orwellian usage here yet either. The local power company decides to put cameras on all its telephone poles, aimed strictly at their base and their two neighbors. With this, they can inspect poles for problems more cheaply and remotely, and instantly know what knocked out the local grid. Even if the camera goes down, you've got footage from a second before showing what happened. Power outages are less common and the cameras have blinders on them so they can only see the poles, wires, and road or curb. They delete everything after 24 hours and promise not to sell the data. Then one day someone gets brutally murdered near one and the police ask for the footage, and of course they give it. And as time goes on, the standards drop a bit until folks say it should be released to prove who was responsible for a traffic accident. Not that you need it anyway, because all those modern cars, even the ones without automated co-piloting, all have cameras on them. In the background, cameras are now so small and cheap, and batteries and Bluetooth so good, that a lot of folks just wear them discreetly all the time, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. It's just not practical to search everyone or ban it. Of course, maybe all those cameras and AI can be used to scan other people and see if they have cameras on, but that's sort of the same ethical dilemma. Nonetheless, especially since I do not want to panic anyone or give an anxiety attack, I want to say early on that a lot of the same tools that make it easy to invade people's privacy can also be used to protect it. I think we have established that you can't really prevent the existence of all that data or computers able to sift through it to create very detailed pictures of events and lives from even minor and disconnected data if they have to. We'll talk today about some of the ways we can mitigate that to let us keep some privacy. Today we're not really interested in discussing if privacy is a reasonable expectation or right either. It is common to remind folks during these discussions that for most of human history, a lot of things we consider private were not. People lived in cramped quarters and often one-room houses inside villages where everyone knew everyone else and had gossiped about them their whole life. And it's a fair point to raise, but needs the caveat that they also had privacy they took for granted that we do not have, like the ability to move 100 miles away and change their name and probably never have their baggage follow them. So too, there's a lot of things our ancestors lacked that we have now, like full stomachs and penicillin, that I'm not okay with losing just because they didn't have it. We do need to acknowledge, though, that we can be very muddled and unclear about what privacy we have and why we are entitled to it. Admittedly, the modern era being a bit of a hodgepodge of ethical systems, this is often the case with any of our rights, but privacy often tends to be one of those implied rights that's needed to have the others. For instance, we never tell folks they have a right to breathe air, even without asking the permission of whoever's home or establishment they happen to be in. It's just assumed, and in the case of privacy, in the US anyway, we usually point to the Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable search and seizure. That right there gives you your basis for the concept that something can be unreasonable, and also that some invasion of privacy by the state can be reasonable. Same, you had to tell a police officer your name if they ask, and in my state of Ohio, under revised code 2921.29, you also have to provide address and a date of birth. But they have to reasonably suspect you of having committed a crime or witnessed one or a few other things. They can't just ask every passerby. Different states, or different countries, have different rules. Here in Ohio, you can't vote without giving your physical address you live at, since so many votes are based on where you live, like your school district and other levies, and that's part of the public record so it can be reviewed by citizens and third parties for concerns over voter fraud. We get a lot of concerns about folks using those public records for nefarious purposes, and I think it is a very real concern, but at the same time it goes the idea that you don't always have an expectation of privacy on certain things. Traditionally, who you are and how old you are and where you live are not among them. You couldn't sell anything age-related as a store owner, like alcohol or cigarettes, if you couldn't demand ID. And from a practical perspective, there's never been anything really stopping folks from writing down who came in their store and what they bought. Indeed, it was usually the hallmark of a good bartender, waitress, or even shopkeeper in general if they knew what you wanted when you came in the door and could just ask, "The usual?" Nor does anything stop the local town busybody sitting on the bench in town and writing down everyone who passed by and when. It might be possible to have a law preventing mechanical or electronic aids, but otherwise, what's stopping that busybody from sitting there with a camera on their lap, recording every passerby, and feeding that into their face recognition software and automatically too? Or stopping a company from mass-producing those devices and having a subscriber service for those wanting to access their face archive? The answer, of course, is either laws or custom, but those do take time to get right, and there's often a lot of folks with a vested interest in not wanting that to be gotten right. And again, that can certainly include the lawmakers and government itself. We also have a bit of a privacy for me, but not for thee attitude, insofar as we're often prying into other people's information while wanting ours protected. We also have things we personally prefer private that others don't care about, or that most care about and we don't. Whether or not we think any sane person would want their favorite food or flavor of ice cream secret probably doesn't relate to whether or not they have a right to keep that quiet or not. Everyone in my household has been tested for allergies, including food. This wasn't random, and everybody turned out to have a few. I was very irritated to find I couldn't have vanilla or peanut butter, and very glad when after a couple years of abstaining from it, the allergy to both went away. But I never kept it a secret or expected anyone else to. I invite friends over and cook for them a lot, and try to keep track of their allergies and preferences too. And yet I could imagine folks being upset about anyone knowing their allergies. We also tend to be a little casual about invading our kids' privacy or gossiping about them, or posting embarrassing pictures or stories about them. I try to watch that with my own kids, but not until I was writing this did it even cross my mind that there might be something wrong about telling a random volunteer at an event what one of my kids' food allergies was without asking that kid first. Quite to the contrary, I tend to encourage them to be fairly open about it to avoid eating something they shouldn't, and my kids are 8, 7, and 6. But if they were teenagers, maybe that would be something I should ask them about first. I don't know, something to think on, but a reminder that parents have a lot of leeway about invading their kids' privacy and probably need that, but that it can probably go overboard too or even get abusive. Needless to say, that reasoning can apply to governments and citizens, and government employees too. My wife and I both have location sharing on our phones turned on for each other all the time. It just got easier to turn it on all the time than selectively, especially to see if we left our phone somewhere. It has come in incredibly handy more times than I can count, and you can turn it off whenever you please, but I can't recall ever doing that. Many folks would never want their partner to be able to see where they were, and fair enough. In my book, you don't ever have to justify why you want privacy from anyone, any more than you have to justify why you find it handy or anxiety relieving to be able to see where your family members are. It raises a fair point that our expectations of privacy from our family are a lot different than our expectations from the government, or friends, or our employer. The degree of trust involved alters the flavor, too. If you feel like you're being spied on by someone who doesn't trust you, it's going to feel very different than when you're viewing it as some information in the hands of someone or something that's strictly there to help you. That's going to matter when we talk about AI having our data, but also comes up with kids and pets. I imagine a lot of folks being all too happy to turn that location feature on for their kid's phone or watch. I sort of take for granted that by the year 2044 it will be fairly rare, especially for younger kids, not to have tracking on them all the time, and ditto for pets. Expect that to expand to being able to flick on the microphone and camera to make sure all is well too. Indeed, there's been a lot of pushes to start putting cameras in classrooms to let parents check up on their kids midday. As a culture, we probably need to decide where the line on that needs to be sooner than later. That line can shift, too. When I was a kid, many folks worried the government might be spying on them with satellites or the SR-71 Blackbird, and maybe they should have been, but now we have way more satellites that can see way better, and folks don't talk about that issue as much anymore. They worry about drones instead, which to be fair is quite understandable. Practically speaking, nothing really stops folks from spying on each other constantly with cameras and drones all over their property or on public roads and paths. Even if it is restricted or outright outlawed in some places, it is basically unenforceable at the moment. And that will be a big thing for today's discussion. Not what should be allowed, but what we can actually usefully enforce. Which probably won't match. Thankfully, we really do have tools in our arsenal for maintaining privacy, and as I said earlier, a lot of the same tools for invading it can help protect it too. That's part of the problem with AI. We all know how dangerous it is, but so much of that danger is because of how valuable it can be, so that we feel obliged to use it. We do always have the option of just saying no to AI and more advanced surveillance technologies and data engines, go smash up all the machines more advanced than X degree, but I don't think we'll see that. I'm sure we'll see lots of folks go off the grid more, but I think we'll mostly seek to fight fire with fire, so to speak, and seek to come up with technological fixes to technological problems. By and large, this has been a winning strategy for us historically, though it is essentially a non-stop wrestling match of strategies, counter-strategies, and counter-counter-strategies. My main issue with that is it sets people in a constant state of anxiety and worry about it. And given that feeling spied on and watched is already a very primal fear of people, it takes a lot to avoid having large sectors of your population feeling hunted and watched to a neurotic level. All the more so because it isn't always going to be unjustified paranoia. And even when it is, it still causes that anxiety in folks. As an example, I've heard people in policy suggest that one upside of the Internet of Things is that during brownouts and power shortages, the government or utility company could send remote shutdown signals to secondary appliances with high draw. For my part, I loathe that idea. I would rather just build more power generation. But I could probably live with it if people would be able to opt in or opt out on auto shutoff for appliances too, or simply having a manual override. Your mileage may vary, but I don't think folks will contemplate that as an intrusion of privacy, and yet it only takes a few seconds to think of ways that could be used to spy on people too, and probably more I'm not thinking of, and that's sort of the point. Most folks who watch this show are at least somewhat tech-savvy, and yet might feel legit qualms about their appliances spying on them. Imagine someone who isn't tech-savvy and has been told their appliance can spy on them now too, and just the background level of dread that could cause. As is, identity theft concerns and the constant barrage of phishing and scam texts and emails, especially targeting senior citizens, has a lot of people in dread their data is out there, and that even their phone, their lifeline to the outside world in many cases, might be a ticking time bomb or a slow poison. So even if privacy is not genuinely under threat, which it absolutely is, we need to be able to not just preserve, but do so with sufficient strength and certainty that people aren't constantly panicked that they're going to lose it. President Jefferson said, "The price of freedom is eternal vigilance," and so it is, but it's not much better if that degree of vigilance is so extreme that none of us feel like we can even breathe without risking losing it. That means policies and strategies that strongly protect that privacy and in a way that people can understand and feel reasonably confident work. That's a much higher bar, especially considering how much of it is online and IT based, and how arcane IT already feels to most folks. So what are these strategies we can use? Well, some are public policy options and others more personal ones, and of course the big one is just the public staying informed and involved. When it comes to rules on privacy, you tend to have an oscillating level of public trust on law enforcement or intelligence agencies, which tends to constrain or relax what they are allowed, and also how much we monitor them. At the policy level, a lot of elected officials feel their privacy is impinged on enormously, and objectively that's very true. If you're in the public eye, you tend to feel watched a lot, and like any slip you make is going to be news and gossip for years to come. So while we tend to assume governments will push to intrude on our privacy, I would say there was a built-in resistance to it there too, and you don't really see a lot of public figures, be they officials or celebrities, out loudly calling for less privacy. Usually when we hear that, it is in regard to some other right being in conflict with another right, their freedom versus someone else's privacy, like the address or current location of someone with a restraining order or a history of stalking or abusing someone. One example of that might be banning posting photos or video or audio of anyone to the internet without their permission, and this obviously is something we would all like, for folks to ask first, and us to have a veto. But we also absolutely don't want to have to not post that awesome photo of a friend or event because we couldn't get everyone in it to say yes. Nowadays we can blur a photo over someone's face for instance, but more importantly, an AI with face recognition software could auto-blur every image of you online, including deepfakes of you, and only unblur them with your permission, which you may have set to no on everything or yes to everything or let me decide each time or so on. We could do the same for voices, for video chats with old and embarrassing photos. The owner of the photo or clip still has it, same as they have their personal memory, but they can't post it without your permission, and we could presumably introduce some fair use policies that an AI could rapidly review case by case, and which could be appealed to some human too. That would probably push things toward the paradigm of people getting in trouble for uploading things without permission more than downloading them, which is mostly how things are settled out at a practical level anyway, and shift things more to an expectation that platforms have to police themselves better. Since this is costly for them, they are understandably resistant to it, but it probably will end up happening, which is really only possible with AI. AI lets you circumvent the classic police state problem of needing a police officer or spy for every citizen, and then some of them to watch the watchers too. But the upside is that an AI can review sensitive material, make a decision or recommendation, then purge its memory of that material. I would say that a human cannot, but we don't want to assume technology might not permit selective memory erasure or brainwashing to prevent someone talking about things they've promised not to. And if that gives off a chilling Orwellian vibe, good, it should. The problem with all this technology, like so much other technology, is that like any tool, it can be used for good or bad ends, and often for gray ends that might have seemed a lot more black and white initially, or like a necessary or lesser evil. Are you impinging on someone's rights by telling them they can't post a photo they took of their family that someone else was photobombing on purpose or accident? Well, yes, you kind of are. They are trying to share a precious moment of their life with friends, and generally nobody cared about that person walking through in the background. Except when they do. And again, the key here is that we don't have to violate one person's rights to give somebody else theirs with the use of AI to automatically remove them from photos. That still leaves problems, like folks exchanging images over the dark web, or journalists being allowed to print news that involves photos or comments by people who are being portrayed in a bad light, justly or unjustly. Does the public's right to know exceed that person's right to privacy? And who decides when? And at a more personal level, don't you have the right to post a bad review of a business, or someone you made a transaction with? If a friend or loved one screwed you over, or turned out to be some wolf in sheep's clothing, do they have a right to make you take down an angry rant about their bad behavior? And of course we do already have laws on a lot of these things, and it varies by location. But enforcement is uneven, and often just impossible because of sheer volume, which is where automation can help. We also don't need to reinvent the wheel on stuff like slander and libel, though it may need tweaking, and sometimes we may have to start from the ground floor up on some policies that can't make the transition anymore. The good news is that privacy is not extinct, yet. The bad news is yes, it clearly is in danger, and our two most obvious fixes are either to bash up or restrict a lot of genuinely useful and often life-saving technology, or to put a lot of trust in artificial intelligence. That does not mean those are the only two options. Cleverer minds may be able to see better methods or chart safer courses, but it does mean we do have some options. It also means that if we want to avoid living in a fishbowl and feeling watched and like Big Brother's eye is always on us, we need to keep our own eyes open and vigilant, but that at least is nothing new. If you've got any good ideas for how we can avoid a future in which we get watched all the time, feel free to share it in the comments on the episode of the show, and in our case at least, thanks for watching. As we saw today, personal privacy is still something we have a lot of, but it is definitely endangered. We talked about some technologies and policies that might help in the future, but you should not wait to take action to protect yourself now. Bad actors are out there using AI to harvest your personal information and selling it on to worse actors. Some data brokers have been charged with conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud for intentionally supplying data lists of elderly and vulnerable people to scammers. Now, legally, they have to take it down if you ask, but first you have to find them and send the requests, and they tend to make it as hard as they can. That's where our sponsor, Incogni, comes in. They use their AI to focus on finding your information online and send automated takedown requests for you. All you have to do is sign up, give them permission to act on your behalf to delete data, then they go to work and your data goes away. You can check up on the progress, see who had your data, and how detailed and risky it was considered. Incogni makes these data harvesters take your info down, and they keep doing it too, making sure that it stays down. Incogni is available risk-free for 30 days, so you can try it out and get a full refund if you aren't happy with the service. Use code IsaacArthur, the link in the episode description, to get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Go to incogni.com/IsaacArthur and take your data back. We opened today's episode with a very telling quote by David Brin, that when it comes to privacy and accountability, people always demand the former for themselves and the latter for everyone else. I think we saw the dangers of that today. Brin writes very engaging fiction and nonfiction, and very prescient takes on technology and civilization, and his book The Transparent Society explores many of the concepts we discussed today in deeper and insightful details. You can check out that or any of his many awesome sci-fi novels or essays at davidbrin.com. Speaking of realistic sci-fi, this weekend we'll wrap up our September episodes with a look at life as an asteroid miner on the 29th, before we head into October to ask if large moons like our own might be a great filter of the Fermi paradox. Then we'll travel to one of Jupiter's larger moons, Io, to ask how and why we might settle that volcanic moon. If you'd like to get alerts when those and other episodes come out, make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons. You can also help support the show by becoming a member here on YouTube or Patreon, or check out other ways to help at isaacarthur.net. SFIA's episodes also come out early and ad-free on our streaming service Nebula, like this month's exclusive episode, Exploring the Multiverse, at go.nebula.tv/IsaacArthur. As always, thanks for watching, and have a great week.